Small rooms and edit suites can often be the most challenging to get even and well balanced sound in, but here's some of our top recommendations on which speaker to choose and how best to use them. Now, having a 5-inch or smaller bass driver means you can position the speakers fairly close into your ears, so you hear less of the room and more of the direct sound of the speakers. This distance is crucial to get the right balance between the woofer and the tweeter, as if your ear is closer to one driver than the other, the balance will be off and the speaker won't be accurate. Speakers are designed to guide the waves so they meet together at a focal point, and this distance is further away on larger bass cone models. Let's start off with some small room tips. Firstly, think about using isolating speaker stands to stop speakers with deep bass vibrating and resonating your tabletop. You want to listen to the speakers, not your furniture. This is less important for the real small drivers, but can make a considerable difference with most 5-inch models. My personal favourite are the ISO Acoustics 155 model, and these also help raise the speaker up. There's 2 lengths of pole that can go here to either, so the tweeters are ear height, or at least pointed towards your ear, which is of course where you're going to get the best tonal balance. The big versions of these are actually built into the stands that my Genelec sit on behind me. Try and position your speakers symmetrically in the room, preferably on the shorter wall for the best stereo image, but make sure that your listening position isn't in the direct centre of the room, which is shown here as the red circle. Here, the bass will actually cancel itself out. Ideally, you'd want to try positioning your listening position about 38% of the distance from the front wall for the largest monitoring sweet spot, shown here in green. But in reality, in most small rooms, just try and get central and then move forward and backwards until the bass response seems to even out as much as possible. Acoustic treatment is actually more cost effective when you've got less space. You've probably not got space to put bass traps straddling the corners of the room like this. This would help tame the room resonances and flatten the low end frequency response. However, if you do have a bed in there, it will actually help quite a bit, especially if it's in a corner. Also, don't worry if you can't cover every corner with a bass trap, because bass doesn't mind which corner it goes into. It will just get absorbed in a corner. So if you can do 1, you can do 2. Don't worry if they're not symmetrical, just go with it. However, you'll make an enormous improvement to your definition and clarity with just 3 broadband absorber panels like the CM Acoustics 486 units. These can be hung like picture frames on the wall, with the speakers fairly close to the front wall. Position these horizontally on the left and right walls, halfway between the speakers and your ears, plus 1 centered on the rear wall, and you want them all centered at about seated ear height. You can of course use more than 3, but those 3 would make the most difference for you. Although foam panels can work in some instances, they tend to stop working below about 400 Hz or so. They absorb lots of the high frequencies, but leave a boomy, uneven lower mid-range, whereas a proper broadband panel with an air gap behind it should be able to get down towards 100, 120 Hz. Speakers, when they're placed close to walls, can help minimise the cancellation of the reflection from the rear and then it coming back out of phase, but it will boost the bass by up to 16 dB next to one wall or 12 dB in a corner. Now, you can compensate for this by turning down the LF control and using acoustic space settings on many speakers. But make sure if you've got a rear ported unit that you need more space behind it than the diameter of the port itself. And ideally, a acoustic panel down in between as well. You can actually use this to your advantage to extend the bass of many calibrated sets like the Icom Multimedia iLoud MTM or Genelec 8300 series, or even DSP room correction software like SonarWorks or Direct Live. All of these work by analysing the sound at the listening position with a microphone, and then it re-EQs the room to even the balance out. They all work best when you've already got some acoustic treatment installed, but they'll make an improvement in almost every space. You can mix properly on headphones. Ignore the naysayers, but you will most probably need a couple of extra plugins to maximize the translation, and perhaps a different set of headphones to the one you have now. I'll cover this in detail in a video very shortly. Anyway, let's get back to our recommended speaker rundown for small rooms. Of course, this isn't to say that only these speakers will work, but we know these particularly will, and we'll give you some advice on how best to set them up. All of these are going up in price order per pair. Firstly, Presonus Aries E4.5. If you can live without sub-bass frequencies, then these have a fairly even tonal balance, especially in the speech region. So great for video work, but also rock and acoustic recording. They've got extensive control on the rear, which makes them adaptable for even some of the worst spaces and even into corners. These room features are quite often only found on higher range monitors like the Mackie HR series, so it's nice to see them in an entry-level set like these. Next are the Icom Multimedia iLoud micro monitors. Now, these used integral DSP, digital processing, that's built into the speaker to get a much wider frequency response from a set of essentially tiny monitors than could be done by acoustic design on its own. They're small enough to easily fit in a suitcase, and these desktop speakers are perfect for positioning either side of a laptop in a hotel room or equally on your home study desk. And again, these come in pairs. Next up, the Presonus Aries E5 XT. These retain the same acoustic space controls like the 4.5, but they deliver much lower bass frequencies, and due to the front firing port can be used right up against the rear wall without being boomy. Obviously, you then need to set the space settings and the LF control. My next choice on paper actually doesn't look that suitable. It's the Adam T5V. They've got fairly mild acoustic controls on the back, so they aren't suitable for going very close to corners, and they've got a rear firing port, so they really do need that 2, 3, 4 inch distance from the rear wall. And again, if you've got a little absorber panel that you can put behind them, so much the better. However, the detail and the balance on these is excellent for almost all styles of music and video work, and they've got a very healthy bass response too. Next, the Genelec 8020D. Well, try finding a Soho edit suite or a broadcast truck that hasn't had a set of these in at one point. The pros love them for their spoken word clarity and the great translation for TV and video work. They can be a bit boomy when they're pointed up on the desk on their own isopod stand that comes with them, so enable the bass roll-off switch on the back to compensate for this. Next, the Icom Multimedia iLoud MTM. These come with their own calibration mic and adapt the tonal balance to match your own room exactly, with fantastic definition and impressively deep bass response out of these two 3.5 inch drivers. Now, the tweeter's in the middle, and this configuration means that you can have these fairly close, 40 centimeters or so, and you should be able to get the whole bass response from them and everything sounding as it should. Now, the port on the back can get a little bit noisy on the lowest bass settings with the lowest notes, but you can stop this by using the 50 Hz cutoff instead of 40 Hz, or just mixing slightly quieter if you're on that setting. These are fantastic for almost any space. The calibration's really easy to use, and they make it easy to get the best out of even the most challenging space. Next up are kind of the polar opposite. These are completely analog speakers, although they have got the option of a digitally connected card that will go in the back for digital audio connections. These are the Head Typo 5, and they've got such impressive sub bass. In fact, it's deeper than most other 6 and 7 inch models. Now, there's only a 4 dB control on the low frequencies on the back, so you really do want to keep these out of the corners to keep the superbly even frequency response accurate. They have got absolutely first-class detail reproduction and come from the designer of the somewhat legendary Adams A7X, but with an extra 5 years of design knowledge behind him. Last but no means least, the Genelec 8331s. Essentially, this could be a lot of the Genelec 83 series, but what makes these essentially the miniature Rolls-Royce of small room speakers is the fact that they have that concealed mid-range driver in the middle too. Put them an inch off the wall and calibrate them with their SAM system microphone for that extended sub bass that I was talking about earlier. And the rest of it is all precisely balanced for your room. They can be used perfectly only 40 centimeters away from your ears if you need them to be. These are essentially a smaller version of the 8350 ones that I've got behind me, which of course are amazing for medium-sized rooms. Hopefully this has given you some ideas for small room speakers. Love to hear what you're using and any tips and tricks that you're doing with them. Drop us a line, scanproaudio@scan.co.uk. Otherwise, leave us a comment and we'll see you for another video again soon.